Hello everyone. Today I am posting a guide for the optional Superboss that you get after both of the endings. Obviously there's going to be a ton of spoilers here, but I'm going to assume you're already aware of that if you're here. So this video is going to be a little different from the way I normally do guides because there are just so many different characters to use. And I know that a lot of people tend to focus either on elemental damage or physical damage. I'm actually going to do one run with a physical based team, and then the other one is going to be an elemental based team. So whichever one you prefer to use, just check the timestamps and it'll tell you exactly where I start on those. But we'll go ahead and start out by just going over the fight in general, and then we'll go into the physical build that you'd want to use for the boss. So one quick thing I do want to mention, just in case, for those who don't actually know where the boss is, once you actually get both of the endings, if you load back into your save in this spot, it's going to tell you that there's, something's rumbling in the distance. To actually get to the boss, you just want to go over here to this right flame, or whatever you want to call this, and go up to the Skies of Vanity. Once it loads here, you'll get another little mini cutscene where it's like everything is shaking again, and all you have to do is go forward here to this green orb of light, and that actually takes you to the boss area. So right here is the save point right before the boss. So one quick thing I want to mention before we actually get into the fight itself is I'm going to be under the assumption that you were already aware of the boss's weaknesses, and so I did this little quick thing in Paint to show you how they cycle through their weaknesses. Basically, they start at the top left, and then every time you strike a weakness, it will swap to the next one in line. So it goes from top left, bottom left, bottom right, top right, and it just keeps repeating over and over and over. Make sure you remember this. I will be putting a full list of the weaknesses in the description as well if you prefer to see it out in written form. But this is going to be really important because I'm going to be going over this guide under the assumption that you are aware of what the weaknesses are every time he changes them. So just keep that in mind. So before we actually get into the really specific strategies, this part's just going to cover some of the characters and things that are going to be present in both strategies. First and foremost, the characters that are going to actually be on both teams. One is going to be Pius. Another is going to be Corinda, and then the last one's going to be Seors. And the reason for those, to make it quick, Pius is so we can very easily debuff all the enemy's defenses while buffing our whole team. Corinda, obviously on the physical team, she's going to be more useful because of the physical attack up, but the reason she's going to be on both is because she gives the whole team sidestep stacks, and the way the boss works is he does nothing but physical attacks, excluding like the orbs, for like the first part of the fight until he is broken at least once. So she basically is going to make the whole team immune to damage unless you just get extremely unlucky. And then Seors is mostly just going to stay in the back. She's not technically needed, but people may not have as many jams to restore ultimates and stuff like that. So her just standing in the back does allow you to get some of that passive regeneration on your ultimates to potentially save on jams, although we still will want to use a few of them. The other thing that you're going to need for both strategies is the Knowledgeable Woman NPC. If you go to Barricane, go to the left side here in front of the church, it's this woman right here. We mostly care about her dark damage that hits everyone 3 times, but it shreds 3 shields no matter what. So that's the reason why we are going to be picking her. So make sure to grab her no matter which strategy that you use. But we'll go ahead and get into how the physical team is going to work and go over the equipment for that now. So when it comes to the physical setup, you're going to see a lot of stuff that's just like empty slots that I didn't put anything in, and that's just to kind of get across that you don't really need to have like all the most OP stuff. There are going to be some things that you are going to want, but as you can see, this is the team that I have set up for it. You definitely are going to want Deme, just because she just does huge, easy damage. Corinda, Seyorse, and Pius are also people that are going to be on both teams, so you're going to want to use them no matter what. Now, Richard technically could be slotted with someone else. He's going to be mostly a supportive character, but I prefer to have him here just because he can buff both types of attack at once, even though we're only using physical this time, and he also can charge some ults. But technically this could be anyone. He's mostly just going to be using items and donating his ultimate to Corinda. Therion, I recommend just having some sort of dagger user behind Deme. Doesn't really matter who it is. For me, I'm going to use Therion, although to be honest, he probably won't end up using his dagger. So this really could be anyone. They're going to be there for a lightning attack. And then for this empty slot, I'm just going to call it a flex slot, just in case maybe your main character is not as strong as mine. Maybe they were a supportive role or something like that. For whenever you break the enemy and it's time to do like really big damage, if you have someone that you've been putting like a lot of nuts in and they deal really, really good damage, feel free to slot them here to deal damage during that time. The main character, I am going to be having him on Warrior, and the reason is for the upending strike attack. And, so if you had him on Hunter or some other type of physical damage DPS, it's pretty easy to move him over to Warrior. So for the equipment, the sword, for your main character, you're going to want to put the best one that you have. I have 2 battle-tested swords. I'm not going to be using either of them just because it's a guide and, I'm just trying to make a point that you don't actually need them. I'm going to assume you have at least 1 copy of all of them. But you can just put your best sword on him, excluding the battle-tested blade. If you only have 1 copy of that, make sure you put that on Deme, because she's the one that's going to be dealing most of the damage. But if you have 2, go ahead and throw one on him. I'm putting Divine Splendor because I want him to go fast, and that gives a lot of speed. Stormblade's going to end up being on Deme. I have the Battle-Tested Spear here as well. For him, I'd recommend the Fang of Ferocity. He is going to be doing most of his damage with boosted attacks. This is a side quest reward, I believe, but technically isn't necessary. And then obviously whatever you want to put in these other slots, just go for it. Just don't give him anything that's going to lower his speed. That is something that we definitely don't want. So for Deme, this is where you want to put your battle-tested sword. She's going to get the most value out of it. The Tempest Spear is the legendary spear from Viator's quest. Not required, but she will be using spear attacks, so if this does trigger, it's really nice. It's like having a second battle-tested passive active at the same time, and they do stack with each other. So it's really nice. Obviously don't need anything other than Finisher's Claws. Her crits are going to deal massive damage, which is why we are bringing this. But outside of that, just bring whatever you want. If she needs more physical attack, bring something like that. Maybe you want survivability. It doesn't really matter. We're not really going to be getting hit all that much. And we're not going to take that much damage, so it's not really a big deal. Just make sure you have Finisher's Claws. It comes from Della Tia's side quest to help her find her brother. Richard, doesn't actually matter. Corinda, I'm using a Forbidden setup with Blessing in Disguise purely for the speed. You just want her to be fast. She needs to go before the boss. It doesn't matter when she goes. She just needs to go before the boss on the first turn. That is really the only thing that is required. So that is how I'm accomplishing that, is with the Forbidden stuff. But you could technically just use accessories that give her that, or armor, to just give her a bunch of speed. It's not too hard to go before the boss, to be honest, but you need to make sure she goes before the boss because she's going to make everyone immune to his attacks. Therion, not going to have anything on him. Pius, if you have the Enfeebling Amulet, definitely use it on him, but it is not required. He is going to help initiate and kick things off, but Corinda will actually help us keep the debuffs on. So if you don't have this, it's not a huge deal, but I will be bringing it along, and it doesn't matter what Seors has. For the skills, both of your DPS characters are going to be using Crippling Thrust. which you can get from Luda. His skill, it's one of his skills that you can master to do the triple hit. Obviously, surpassing power comes from Ulbrich, and then immeasurable power. There is one you can get from your store in your town, and then there's another one that you get from a boss that you would have had to beat to get here. You should be able to, you probably already have the two that way. Technically, you can have up to 4, but we only need 2 for this strategy. So they're both going to actually have the same loadout in that regard. For Richard, donate charge if you have it. If you don't have this skill, in Suffratija, or however you pronounce it, that desert city way down to the south, if you go back there, go to the palace area, and then go to the left, if you go all the way to the left and then up the stairs, there is an NPC there that has this ability. It is not necessary, especially if you have a lot of jams, but I like to have it because there will be a point where Richard has like 3 BP and a ult that's not doing anything, and you can just give that to Corinda for more sidestep stacks. For Corinda, the only thing I would say you want to have on her is the Armor Corrosive. You can get that from Therion, and that's because she is going to reapply the debuff to make sure he's always weak. Guardian Aura, I'm going to have it on her, but to be honest, you don't actually need it. But the only damage you're going to be taking is from elemental attacks, unless you get extremely unlucky. But if you have it, go ahead and throw it on her. Ultimate Charge, you probably have a couple of these lying around. If you have a second copy of this, put it on Pius, but if not, at least put it on her. If you don't have one, you can just use a jam on her at the beginning to give everybody sidestep stacks. We don't have to rush kill this boss. We are going to break him well before he does his party-wide insta-kill attack. But this just makes it easier. It saves you a turn in the beginning, so I'd recommend putting it on her if you have it. The show goes on. Not necessary, but it is nice to have. You can get that from the main character dancer. Primrose technically has this, but you can't get it from her as as a mastery. But you can get it from the main character. For Therion and Pius, both of them you're going to want to put Thunder's Refrain, and you get that from Goodwin. And the reason we want it is for the 3-hit lightning damage. I'm not sure, we aren't going to know which one of them are going to actually use it yet, and I'll show you when that comes up in the fight. But you want this ability to be on kind of multiple rows for whenever a really specific point comes in the battle, and you could technically use a physical attack from Therion to accomplish the same thing, but the physical attack can miss, and so it's better to just have this to get the guaranteed hits. And then Seoris, it doesn't actually matter what she has on her. Obviously, again, for all the blank slots, put in your best stuff. As long as you have the things that I specifically mentioned, you're going to be fine. The only other thing is I would recommend having some kind of food. I'll leave that kind of up to you on what you want to use. I recommend sauteed veal, no matter what you're doing, just because 30% HP is just really nice in case something unexpected happens. Technically, it is possible for you to get really unlucky, and the boss just does a random target multi-hit attack and just attacks the same person over and over and over and over and over for multiple turns, and he breaks through it and kills them. This can help mitigate those times when that happens. Then obviously the physical attack and stuff is good. Because this is a guide, I'm not actually going to be using it, but I'd recommend putting that on. So that's pretty much everything, and we're ready to go, so we'll go ahead and get into the fight now. Alright, so whenever you're ready, just go ahead and click on the big green ball here, and you'll go ahead and get the fight started. So the cool thing about this fight is that you can take a lot of the RNG out of it. It's a really straightforward fight, and we're not even going to really be taking that much damage. There are some mechanics to the fight. Basically, he has all these orbs, and based on certain things that you do, it's going to trigger different orbs to activate. At the beginning, the Crimson one's always going to be there. It alternates between buffing his attack and hitting somebody with a relatively weak elemental attack, at least compared to his other attacks. And we are going to end up killing it. The yellow one at the top is really annoying because when you debuff the boss, on the next round it's going to activate. That one's really annoying because one of the things it does is it hits your whole front line for pretty big damage. Now, it's not going to one-shot anybody. You can heal through it, but we don't want it... One, we don't want it absorbing some of our random attacks later on, and I'll show you how we're going to deal with that here soon. The green one, The green one is if you break him and don't finish him. After he recovers from his first break, he actually gets stronger, gets new attacks, and then that green one activates, and it'll heal him for 9,999 every round, and then also hit the front line for like a double wind hit that's really, really dangerous. You probably won't have to deal with that, especially if you're using like battle-tested equipment and not like, you know, going in with no equipment like I am. And then the blue one, I have no idea what activates it. I've never gotten it to activate, so you can just ignore that one. His weaknesses, whenever you strike a weakness, he will swap them, but it's always the same pattern. So we're actually going to take advantage of that as we fight him. So to start off, we're with the main character here. We're just going to hit the Crimson Orb first. We just want to get a little bit of damage. Corinda is always going to do Trick of the Trade, and that's just to give us sidestep stacks. It's important she goes before the boss because he can only do physical attacks right now. He doesn't start doing elemental until after the break. And then on this line, we're going to swap over to Pius. A big reason we're actually doing this right now is because we want to go ahead and make sure that yellow orb spawns nice and early so we can start hitting it with AoEs. So he always does this big AoE hit. And then the other reason is that we're about to also hit him with this ultimate here for some shield shaving. Make sure you target the boss because these cursors, sometimes they get wacky. You know, they're supposed to technically target the last thing, but I've had them switch targets randomly. Make sure you're attacking the boss with this one, not the orb. So we do want to get the shield shaved off here. So the next one, once Rhyme is up again, it's important that you do not forget to use the Queue Up the Knowledgeable Woman, and as you can see, the golden orb is up. We're then going to go to her Learn Skills, and we're going to use a full boosted Crippling Thrust. And again, see, it moved me back to the Crimson Dragon Orb, so just be careful. You're going to hit the boss with this attack. So this is going to shield some more shave some more shields, if I could say it. Speak, you know. And then she comes in, hits for 3 more, and then triggers it to change again. With the main character on this turn, we're going to go ahead and Drafendi's Rage. Hopefully we don't miss the crits. If you're using a good sword, you will very easily crit here. But we're mostly trying to kill the, you know, that orb up there. So now we are back to the swords. We are not actually going to hit that weakness until it is time for, like, Deme is the one that's going to basically hit the sword weakness every time. So now that we have Corinda back up, what we are going to want to do here is we're going to swap to Seors, and you only need to worry about this if you did not kill the Golden Dragon Orb. Because the Golden Dragon Orb is not going to one-shot us, but it is going to do really big damage. And this is another reason why having Seors is really good. We're going to go ahead and use Dance of Respite, and this will completely negate the damage it's going to do to us. So, and here's that multi-hit attack that can potentially, you get really unlucky and it hits through. So now that we have Pius back up, we are kind of just waiting right now. There's nothing that Pius can really do. So we want to go ahead and give a Rejuvenating or Reinvigorating. It doesn't actually matter which. You do need to be careful with the SP on your main character and Deme because their abilities are costing twice as much. But just in case you, for some reason, don't have all the Rejuvenating Jams, we're going to use a Reinvigorating on Deme just to give her ultimate back, since it is just kind of a dead turn. Let's see, it does good damage, but it doesn't kill anyone, and then we just heal. It's not a huge deal. Now that the main character is back up, we're going to go ahead and use an AoE spear hit. And make sure that you're using a spear hit here, just because we do not want to accidentally, we do not want to waste the weakness. Anytime the sword weakness is up, we want to be hitting them with Deme's ult, nothing else. He's not weak to spears right now, so we are just going to do as much charge as you can, hit it with an assault because it's a really good AoE hit, and we're trying to kill that orb. And as you can see, we did it. Again, you probably would have killed him with the Drafendi's Rage earlier, and you would have been fine. So, now we're going to go ahead and move Corinda back up. We still have some sidestep stacks, but we are getting a little low, so we do need to keep an eye on that. But his debuff stacks are also getting really low. So this is why you want to have Armor Corrosive on Corinda. We're actually just going to do a fully boosted one. Make sure that stays nice and high. And at this point, we're actually going to just swap over to Richard just because he has more health. It doesn't actually matter. And then we are going to... Oh, actually, this is where you would use Donate Charge. So, since he has max BP, you can donate his ultimate charge to Corinda. If you do not have this ability, which, again, you should just go and grab it. There's no reason not to. You can just use a jam on Corinda. This is so on the next turn she can give everyone more sidestep stacks. That's the only reason. So, next we'll go ahead and do another Lotus Blade. We're not going to do another one until he is ready to be broken. So there he goes. He does another one of his physical attacks. As you can see, the little dots under his name, if that maxes out, he wipes your team. But we have so much time to work with that we don't actually need to worry about that. Since the main character is back up and I don't want to actually use any of his SP right now, I'm actually going to use him to use one final Reinvigorating. This should be the last one you need to use, and we just need to give Reimei her ultimate back. That's the big thing here. With Corinda, we're going to go ahead and reapply more sidestep stacks so, you know, we don't just get surprised and, you know, multi-hit into oblivion. And then at this point, just be keeping an eye on your SP. So a lot of your like support characters are now just going to be giving SP. Whenever he is weak to spears, we're going to go ahead and use Reimei, and as long as he has, let's see, what is it? It's oh yeah. So if he has 10 shields here, almost forgot. You're going to want to use the Knowledgeable Woman. Anytime the spear weakness is up, use the Knowledgeable Woman, and then Crippling Thrust. Almost made a mistake there. And this will allow you to shave a whole bunch of shields and keep forcing him to the next rounds. Now, whenever he gets nice and low like this, I'll wait for him to do his attack and then I'll explain it. Our goal here is we want him to be at 1 shield and weak to sword whenever we're ready to break him. That is the goal. And this is why you wanted to have the thunder attack on 2 people, because you don't know who's going to be available when you do this. Whenever you are about to break, so in this instance where you have like 4 shields and you are getting ready to break, you want Reimei to defend on that turn. And so Therion is one of the people that has our thunder attack, but because we need to defend with Reimei, so she goes first, it is better to also have it on Pius, because now I can swap to Pius, and I can hit with a Thunder's refrain here, shave the 3 shields, and then it'll move him back to the sword weakness. He always talks whenever he gets to certain thresholds. And now we got 3 turns to kind of mess around with to get our turn orders right. You don't need to rush it at this point. Again, we have all these sidestep stacks, and it is extremely unlikely he's going to get through them. So all I'm going to do, our buffs are maxed out. He is plenty debuffed. We do not have to worry about that. I'm actually just going to use an Inspiring Plum Basket, just to make sure that our DPS don't run out. Once it gets to Reimei, technically she's already going first on the next turn, but just for the guide's sake, defend with her to force her to go on the next one. And then anyone else, if you have plenty of SP, be like, oh, well, you know, my main character could use some more BP because he only has 1. You know, I'm not even going to use another jam because I could technically give him his ultimate back, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give him his BP back. And then, oh, I see that, you know, Reimei could use some BP, so why not? I'm just going to go ahead and give it to her. Just some regular energizing pomegranates is fine. You don't need any more jams. And then once she's up, we're ready to blast them. And this is why you want him to be weak to sword, because when you break him, he doesn't change his weaknesses. And this is important because if he does not die during this break, which is extremely unlikely, but if he does not die, we want him to be weak to sword so we can finish him with one more ultimate from Tome. But now we're just going to do a max boosted Stormblade to actually break and get some extra damage while he's broken. So you can see that does huge damage when he's broken. I only got the 3 out of 5. I didn't even get the max hit. Doesn't actually matter what Corinda does. I'm just going to defend. Main character comes up. Upending Assault is going to be your best bet unless you gave him like some alternate move. So, huge damage. It doesn't actually matter what PS does. We're just going to... Hey, here, take this. There you go. He's really contributing there. It's supposed to be dialogue, but it glitches out a lot. It doesn't matter what Corinda does. When your main character comes back up, you'll notice that I can't even use this anymore because it's too expensive, but it's fine. He's already done what he needed to do. Just get your next biggest damaging ability, which in my case is, I think these actually do the same. I don't actually know. This one costs less, but it doesn't actually matter. But that still just did ridiculous damage. And but, you know, Tome is sitting here on her ultimate. This is 100% going to finish him. You very likely have already ended this fight if you were using like the battle-tested blade and stuff like that. But this pretty much works 100% of the time. There is a tiny bit of RNG in the middle of that first phase, as you saw. Technically, there was the time when I used Drafendi's Rage to try to kill the yellow orb. And I just happened to do it on a turn that the boss was weak to bows, because it just lined up that way. Technically, if my main character had gone before Tome in that instance, I would have hit the yellow orb without there being a bow weakness, and it wouldn't have like moved him forward. So just, again, once you start getting him really close to being broken, and he is sitting on the sword weakness again, just hit him. You can just take even if you have to take like 2 turns to do it, you can actually just use Almighty Soulstones on him to lower his shields to where it's only 1 without forcing him to change his weaknesses. And then you always do the exact same thing. You defend with Tome, make sure all your buffs and debuffs are on, and then you just hit him with her final attack, break him with that, do big damage, and then you finish with the ultimate, and that's a wrap. It's pretty straightforward. Just be careful when shaving the shields. If you do accidentally break him early, that's not like the end of the world. Again, if you're actually using like battle-tested equipment and stuff, you don't have to be super optimal with it, but that's the way I would suggest it. So now we'll go ahead and move on to how the elemental side of things works. Alright, so when it comes to magic, I will admit that I didn't really use much of an elemental team, so a lot of my characters actually, they don't have like a lot of nuts put into them in terms of like the elemental attack and whatnot, but I think that actually helps for this guide's sake. It's a little less consistent because we are going to be using Rechant, and you don't necessarily know exactly how many hits you're going to be landing at any given point, but it is still pretty consistent thanks to Corinda and being able to ignore a lot of the attacks, and not to mention that we're going to be using a ton of just AoE and especially like ultimates that are going to just get a bunch of free damage, it's still pretty consistent, and you're still very likely to finish them on the first break, especially if you know, actually ran with a lot of elemental people. But I'll go ahead and show you the setup that I'm going to use. Here are the characters, as well as like the formation that I'm going to use. Richard, like I mentioned before, technically you could replace him with someone else, but for the sake of this guide, you really need to use him because I am going to be using his ultimate. I won't really be using his bolster at all, but his ultimate is going to be a really good enabler to start the damage pumping very early. My main character literally has no magic attack nuts or anything on him, so you'll kind of see what that looks like. But it's fine because, you know, we got people like Cyrus, Alexia, Isla. They're going to do a lot of carrying, and technically the main character is going to do some damage as well. Like I mentioned before, Pius, Seors, and Corinda are pretty much necessary for the way this strategy is going to work. Seors, not so much, just because you don't necessarily need the HP regen, as it's not as important in this one as it was in the physical one, because you very likely are going to kill that yellow orb much easier, but these are the characters that you're going to want to be using. I'm going to assume you have Isla as well if you are watching this guide. So, one quick thing I will mention is I won't be running food for this guide, just, you know, for example purposes, but obviously run something. There's no reason not to. I know there are stronger magic-based foods, so feel free to use those, but this is one that I really like, the sautéed veal. Even though you get a little less elemental attack, the HP is just nice in case something goes wrong that you weren't expecting, but, you know, I'm not going to be using food for this guide, so I'll leave it up to you on what you want to use. As far as the equipment, some people are not going to have anything, and that's just because they don't need anything, so Richard literally has nothing. For Cyrus, I'm setting him up to primarily have like a lot of ice-based potency. So the battle-worn Tome, just, you know, for across the board, but then the absolute zero staff for the ice-based stuff. Some of this stuff doesn't actually matter, like the Night Shield. In fact, I'll just take it off. The elemental heavy armor and elemental hat is purely just because I need the elemental attack for my particular characters. So if you do need the elemental attack still, definitely put on stuff that's going to give that. I'm going to be using the Fang of Ferocity for Cyrus here because we are going to be using a lot of boosted attacks from him, and we are kind of hoping that we're going to get some of those rechants for the free damage. It's not a huge deal if we don't really get them, but this will help get some more damage out, and then I'm using the Elemental Augmenter, again, just because I'm trying to hit around the 999 elemental attack. For Alexia, I have her set up to do light and dark based damage, but to be honest, a lot of her damage is going to come from her ultimate. So really the big thing is just to try to get her elemental attack as high as you can. Mine's at 964. Again, stuff that's going to give elemental attack in terms of gear. I know this Academy Insignia and Mental Belt are not exactly the most fantastic ones, but as far as what I have, was the best available at the time, so that's what I'm going to end up using, but you can slot in anything to try to give her more elemental attack. Her ultimate just hits really hard in general, so it's fine. Corinda, just like with the physical guide, you just want a lot of speed on her because at the beginning you need her to go before the boss on the first turn. That's all that actually matters. As long as you can meet that criteria, it actually doesn't matter what you put on her in terms of gear. For the main character, I gave him the battle-tested staff just because of the raw elemental attack, and my elemental attack was so low. And then I am also giving him the Tome of Heaven and Earth just for the lightning and wind potency. He'll be primarily using wind attacks and some lightning attacks when shaving shields. I gave him the body armor for the elemental attack, again, just to get more. The Eye of Calamity isn't going to matter in terms of like the debuff on it. We're going to be buffing things very quickly. So by the time the main character is actually dealing damage, those debuffs are going to be gone, and this just gives a ton of elemental attack, which is why I'm using it. You may not need this if your main character is already good in terms of elemental attack. You don't need to bother using this. You can use something that's better. And Mental Belt, again, just for more elemental attack. P.S. I would recommend putting the Enfeebling Amulet. It is not a requirement, but if you have it, just throw it on them, but it's not a big deal if you don't. Isla, I'm using the Solaris Tome, not because I really care about the SP costs, it's just Lots of elemental attack, just trying to get him as close to 999 as I can. I don't really care about over-capping it, which is apparently a thing. It's not really necessary for this guide. Obviously, this stuff is elemental attack. One thing that I will say about Isla is his ultimate, while it does scale off of SP used, it more so scales off of elemental attack. So you want to focus more on elemental attack over SP first, and then like once you're sitting at like 999 roughly, then you can worry about adding SP if you need to. So I have this amulet, it's purely just for the elemental attack, and the finisher's clause because he's the only one that can crit with magic attacks. So if he crits, that's big damage. And then Sayorus just doesn't have anything because it's not necessary. As far as skills, Richard, I would highly recommend getting the Show Goes On. You can get this from the main character on his dancer to put it on him because we are going to be using his ultimate to keep everyone buffed. Leadership, you can get it from your store in town, in your town. This one is really good just in case you do need to use bolster, but it also is just going to increase his ultimate duration, which is really nice. This isn't a requirement. In fact, I think in terms of his ultimate, I don't think these stack in terms of giving like 2 extra turns, but in case you decide you want to use bolster, this is still really good to have, you know, just in case. For Cyrus, I definitely am going to have Glacius called Claudaire, just because I specialized him for ice damage, so when he is ready to deal damage, he's going to be, you know, using ice attacks. I do have this Ice Boulder Mastery. My Cyrus is not like absolutely stacked, so this usually ends up being better for me if the enemy is broken, just because I'm not hitting for 99,000 times 3 with Glacius Claudaire, but I'll kind of leave it up to you on what kind of attacks you want to use during the break. The Glacius Claudaire is more for breaking, and it is going to do good damage as well, but it is mostly going to be for breaking and AoE hitting the multiple orbs in the fight. I have Ignis Ardere. I may not even end up using it, to be honest, but it's there just so I have a 3-hitting fire attack. Suppressing power obviously is going to be on all your DPS. You're going to need that. Get it from Ulbrich. And then price of power, you do get 2. There's one that you can buy from your store in town, and then there's another guaranteed one that you can get from a fight. You can technically, if you had actually stolen from the boss that drops it, you can technically have up to 4 of these. However, just in case you did not steal from that boss because you didn't know to or forgot or whatever, I'm only going to be using 2 price of powers, assuming you bought the one from the store and got the guaranteed drop one. So Cyrus is going to be getting one of them, Alexia is going to be getting the other one. So as you can see, she's the one that has the other one. For her, I have her stuff that gives her light and dark damage, so she's going to be using Lux Conjure. She may not end up using this. A lot of what she's going to do is she's going to be hitting with her ultimate just to get free damage before we break. A lot of this strategy is going to have to deal with whittling him down with a bunch of free ultimates while we break him, so when we break him, he doesn't have much health left over, since, you know, magic damage is more about AoE and not necessarily like, you know, high multi-target damage. I have Shadow Remorse. It's mostly just for a 4-hit shield shave. Because of the way this fight is going to work, we don't know what attacks we're going to use and when. So having something that hits 4 times is nice, but I'm not going to use it for damage or anything. And then I have this one. This is mostly just because if I decide to damage with her, this ability would be the best out of all of them that I have on her currently in terms of like getting as much damage as possible. So that's why it's on her, but I'll kind of leave it up to you on which ones you want to put on each character. Corinda, you're going to want Mind Sap. I believe it's Delatia? Yeah, Delatia is the one that you actually get that from. So you're going to want at least 2 copies of that. One is going to go on Corinda, and then the other one is going to go on Pius. And that's just to make sure that the elemental defense down does not run out. That's really important. For your ultimate charge mastery, so someone starts with 1 extra ultimate charge, definitely put that on Corinda. If you have a second one, I would recommend putting it on Pius, I guess, but it's not really necessary for this strategy. We're going to be using jams to give everyone their ultimate with Doter's Charity, so it's not as like required You really don't need more than one, but having this one on Corinda to start with just gives you more stacks at the beginning, because we're not going to get a chance to actually like charge her ultimate with a jam. The show goes on. Again, you can get that from the main character on the Dancer. You're going to want this on her just... well, actually, no. This actually isn't as necessary. I forgot. I was thinking of the physical guide for a second there, but no. This is not actually as important on her because it doesn't make her give more sidestep stacks, so you can actually just get rid of that. It doesn't matter for this particular setup. The main character, I am going to have Tantris Canair, because he does more lightning and wind damage. So I just have that on him mostly for breaking, and then this particular one that's a... oh, sorry, the Tantris Canair is for lightning. The Ventus one is obviously for the wind. He's going to be hitting the wind weakness a lot. And then the Wind Slash is purely just for when I'm ready to do damage. So that's what that's for. I am going to use Elemental Expertise on him. If you have the Surpassing Power, whatever that magic version of it is, if you have more copies of it, go ahead and put one on your main character. It is definitely worth it. Again, I'm going to assume maybe you didn't steal the extra ones, and I'm just going to leave the Elemental Expertise on him instead. So for PS, just the Mind Sap is all that matters. This actually is irrelevant. I forgot to remove that, so you can ignore the extra support skills. For Isla, none of these actually matter. You can put whatever you want. All he needs is Surpassing Power, and then I would recommend Rechant just because of that extra hit that's, you know, going to hit really hard. If you get lucky and he triggers it, it's really nice. He already has really high base damage, so you very likely don't need the Surpassing Power for him. And then Seors just doesn't need anything. So that's pretty much everything. We'll go ahead and get started with the fight and go over basically what you're going to want to do. Right. One quick thing I forgot to mention in the last one, for the formation, just a slight change. Go ahead and move Pius to the front and try to make sure that his speed is going to be faster than Alexia's. So right now I have him at 263, hers is at 242. Whatever you need to do to make him just a little bit faster than her. It's just a little optimization to squeeze in some extra damage at the beginning. So forgot to mention that before, but go ahead and do that before going into the fight. So now that you're ready to start the fight, go ahead and click on the big green ball. And to go over a couple of the mechanics in case you didn't watch the physical team part of it, basically as you do certain things, these little orbs will start becoming active. The crimson one is always there at the beginning. It's not really that dangerous. It just alternates between buffing his attack and doing a weak random target elemental hit. When you debuff the boss, the yellow one will trigger on the next round. That one's a lot more dangerous because one of the things it does is it hits your front line for a really hard-hitting AoE elemental attack. So we are going to end up just killing them coincidentally with our ultimates and whatnot. So we're not going to have to worry about it too much, but this is part of the reason why Seors is here, is just in case you need that HP regen. She can help out, although we likely won't need that. The green one, after you break the boss once and he recovers, the green one activates, and it alternates between healing him for 9,999 and then hitting the front row with just a really hard-hitting AoE wind attack. Ideally, we won't have to worry about that, and if you have a stacked team, you're going to easily beat him on the break, so no worries there. The blue one, no idea what it does. I've never gotten it to trigger, so I don't actually know what causes it to trigger. You're fine to ignore that one. As far as his weaknesses, every time you hit one of his weaknesses, he changes it. And he always cycles through the same 4, and we're going to use that to our advantage here to kind of whittle him down. And at the beginning, there's a set thing you need to do, but then we're going to kind of just whittle his shield down slowly over time. We have to make sure his little dots don't fill up at the bottom or he wipes the team. But we'll have plenty of time, and once we get him close to the end, I'll show you how you set up for the break and just get big damage. During that time, we are just going to be hitting him with random ultimates and hard-hitting abilities in between shaving his shields, just to bring down his health pool for whenever we break him, just so we can make sure to kill him in one break. So, like I mentioned before, you always want Corinda to go before the boss, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use Trigger the Trade. This is just to give a sidestep sex so we can ignore the boss's attacks. He does not do any elemental attacks whatsoever himself until you break him at least once. And then with Richard, this is why I say to bring him. We're going to use his ultimate right from the get-go. And then once we get over to Pius, so he always does this big AoE hit, which is why you want her to go first. But with Pius, we're going to go ahead and use his ultimate. This is because of what we're about to do next, but it's also because it gets that yellow orb spawned in. We want to kill that as soon as possible in the next round. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and hop over to Isla, and we're actually just going to go straight up use an ultimate right from the get-go. This is just to get some free damage. Depending on how good your Isla is set up, you might do a lot more than that, but no worries. Okay, so on the next round, what we're going to go ahead and do as just a precaution is we're actually going to swap to Seors, and we're going to put Dance of Respite on everyone, because you're likely going to take at least one hit from that yellow ball. So yeah, it's not going to one-shot everyone, like I mentioned, but you are going to want to just put that on there just in case, but we will take care of it here in a second. So next, we're going to want to use Doter's Charity, and it depends on who has gone. If it's a situation where this line with Seors and Corinda's already gone, don't use it on one of them. Instead, use it on someone like Isla or Alexia. It doesn't actually matter which one we use it on. Just someone that is going to go on this turn. If everyone is gone and your main character ends up, being way too slow, then technically you can just give it to Corinda and we will prep on the next phase. But in this instance, usually he's not going to go last. We're going to go ahead and just give it to Isla. And this is so we can give everyone their ultimates, BP, all that good stuff. Because we are going to be using some jams here. So here comes some sidestep, sex, coming in clutch. And now that we have kind of set everything up, now we're actually going to start dealing some damage. So with Cyrus, we're going to do as much charge as we can. Glacius Calder. Hopefully we get the rechant. No, we didn't. Oh well, it's not too big of a deal. And then with Isla, what we're going to do here is after you do the ice weakness, I'd recommend doing the Knowledgeable Woman here, just to shred some more shields. And then because Isla is the one that we used the Doter's Charity on, we're actually going to use one of our rejuvenating jams. This is going to give everyone their ultimates, but it's also going to enable Isla to do another ultimate when we're ready for him. So you'll notice we're actually going to take another hit from that yellow orb, hence why we put the regen on. It probably will not survive beyond this point. So at this point, once you get past that weakness, the next set of weaknesses that he's going to have on the third set is, well, the only ones you're going to care about anyway, is Dark and Wind. This is why you have the Ventus or the 3-hit on your main character. We do not care about using BP because we're going to be regenerating it a lot. So go ahead and just do a maxed one to hit him. If you want, you can throw in the Knowledgeable Woman to just get 3 shields shaved if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and save her just in case. And then on the last one, the 2 that we care about is Lightning and Light. And we're probably going to be using a lightning attack. So now that we have cycled back to Corinda, she has her ultimate back. Even if on the previous turn you used her to give everyone a jam, you're still going to use her Trigger the Trade here, because we do not want our sidestep stacks to run out. Right? And then here, technically, he is not, Cyrus is not capable of hitting these weaknesses with any 3-hit moves. He technically could use the Lightning Blast. We're not going to use that though. We are still going to use another jam later on. So actually, we're just going to go ahead and Grand Trinity, just so we can wipe that yellow orb easily. It will strike the weakness, but Again, we're just trying to get a lot of supplemental damage as we kind of whittle him down for later. Alright, and that takes care of the yellow orb, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. And now he is cycling back to his beginning. Anytime he is on the ice, I always recommend using Cyrus if you can, because I set him up for ice damage. And if you get that rechant, that's just a lot of free damage. I know we just used Isa's ultimate, but we're actually going to use it again. And we're just whittling him down, so whenever it is time to break, he is close to dead. Because we don't want to have to fight him through a second break, if we can help it. With Corinda, at this point, there's not too much she can do. What I'm actually going to do here is when he has the ice weakness up, I'm just going to throw out a knowledgeable woman just to start whittling down the shields a little bit faster. We do kind of want to work on getting him kind of close to one shield. Just make sure you don't accidentally break him. Always count how many that you're doing. And I noticed that, you know, some people have taken damage, but all the orbs are dead, so I don't care. I'm more concerned with people getting their SP back. So I will go ahead and just use that. We get the free shield shave. We get back to the main character, and what I'm actually going to do with the main character at this point is I'm going to use another Doter's Charity on Corinda again. Or, well, I'm used to using it on Corinda. I know we used it on Isla before, but at this point you want to use it on her no matter what. It's max boosted, so it doesn't matter when she goes. Cyrus is up. He's weak to ice, so we are going to just do a max boosted Glacius Calder. So a lot of the shield breaking actually comes from Cyrus in the main character. Now we're actually going to swap over to Alexia, and we're going to use her ultimate. Again, we're just whittling him down. We do not want to rush to break him, because if you do that, you won't get enough damage in, and then you have to fight a much stronger version of him once he comes out from the break. So Alexia just does big damage without messing up our shield counting, I guess. And then, you know, everyone is kind of low on stuff, so we're going to go ahead, and because we used Doters on Corinda, we're going to go ahead and use another Rejuvenating. This should be the only one you have to use. Maybe you end up having to use one later, but we'll get to that point in a second. So right now, she has Fire and Darkness weakness. I don't really want to strike that with any of my current people. Anytime it's the Darkness and Fire, which is the third set, I recommend just using the Knowledgeable Woman. And at this point, so after giving Doter's Charity to someone and that person giving the ultimate back to the main character, I would recommend at that point using Aliphan's Wisdom. And this is so those really expensive moves that we're going to be using a lot of, we don't have to worry about anyone running out during the damage phase or anything like that. Right, and then I do notice that he is starting to get kind of low on his stacks in terms of his debuffs. So I still have 3 more turns to shave plenty of shields. Alexia is coming up who can do dark damage to force it into the next weakness state. So I'm actually going to go ahead and use Pia's here. You want to make sure that your buffs and debuffs remain up at all times, just so you're getting the maximum amount of damage, obviously. We didn't need Cyrus right there, so it's fine that he didn't attack. And then because he is weak to darkness, and we just want to get his shields down at this point, I am just going to go ahead and use a fully boosted Shadow of Remorse here. This is why I have it. It's for the 4 shields. Just a little bit of chip damage. And we're getting kind of close. So at this point, you need to be careful. You do not want to accidentally break him early. That would be really, really bad if you accidentally break him early. Right now, no one important needs their abilities, and even though we do have quite a lot of side stacks, or sidestep stacks, I am going to go ahead and use this one more time. Again, just to make sure that he doesn't just do like his multi-hit attack on the same person 2 rounds in a row and, you know, destroy them. Right now, he is weak to lightning, and I can go ahead and shred 3 of those right now. I'm not going to use any BP this time because we're getting close to breaking him and we want to be careful here. So I'll just use a regular one. So at this point, we've cycled back to the ice. If you didn't hit the ice weakness when you're ready to break him, it's not a huge deal. It's not like the end of the world. But it is nice to try to get to the ice weakness once that happens. Or when you're ready to break, because Cyrus, again, does big ice damage, and if he hits the rechant on the break, it's just really, really nice. Now, at this point, you are now ready to set up for the break. And what I mean by that is your goal is you want Cyrus or whoever is breaking. Technically, if it was like, say, wind damage, you would want your wind damage user to be going first on the next break. And all you can do, or all you have to do, is defend with them on the previous turn, and that will move them to the beginning of the next turn. You want the person that is breaking them to go at the beginning, so you have 2 full turns of as much damage as you can fit in. However, you also want to try to make sure that you do it while he only has 1 shield. Now, let's pretend that Cyrus went last. I know technically we have Alexia coming up, but let's pretend Cyrus went last, but he still has 2 shields. And I do not want to hit that ice weakness yet because I don't want to move him forward a shield. All you have to do, again, I'm pretending that Cyrus went last because we need to defend with him to move him to the beginning. If I were to do that, he would then have to try to break him through 2 shields, which I get less damage from. So what I would do is I would just say, well, I have 2 more turns before he insta-kills us. So instead of defending right now, I'll just go ahead and go to an Almighty Soulstone. This always shreds 1 shield, and it's not going to make him change his weaknesses. I'm going to pretend that Alexia didn't go on this round. And then all we have to do is say, okay, he has 1 shield, he has the ice weakness. We're just waiting at this point. There's nothing that anyone could really do, so I'm just going to defend. You want to make sure that Cyrus goes first on the next round, so as long as he is the last one to defend or the only one to defend, we just want to move him to the front, and now we are ready to break. He won't actually use his ultimate until his turn actually comes up, so you have until this turn on his move for him to actually kill you. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the Ice Boulder. Usually does more damage for my particular setup. But the first one will break, and then hopefully we get the rechant if we're lucky. We were not, but oh well. Corinda, there's not really anything for her to do, and so I'll just let her do whatever. For the main character, the whole reason I have Wind Slash is, again, it's mostly just a cheaper version of the other one. It technically does the same, but, you know, get a little bit of ship damage here. Alexia, we're just going to use her ultimate. It's a nice 99k hit. Then Corinda, doesn't really matter. I don't know if I'm going to finish him on this, but if I don't, it's not a huge deal. Now what we'll go ahead and do is, as far as the ultimate technique, we're going to save it. I don't really feel like I need to use it, and if I do go into a phase 2, you know, I want to make sure it's there. So we'll go ahead and use the ultimate this time. And just get a whole bunch of damage. Now he's in red health. We're going to go ahead and swap to Isla, and this time we're actually going to use Arcane Comet. And what we're hoping for here is we're hoping that we hit the rechant. I've kind of been really unlucky. I've been really unlucky with the rechants. Yeah, I haven't gotten any of them. So we're going to go into a phase 2. It's not the end of the world. He doesn't just like immediately wipe you or anything, but he does get a lot more serious. We need to finish him quick, or things are going to start getting really bad. So at this point, we need to start just trying to use as many ultimates on him. At this point, you want to use your reinvigorating jams if you have them. He's always going to lead with that big slam attack, which because you have sidestep up, it's not going to kill you. But we're going to go ahead and try to get some ultimates back using the reinvigorating jam. With the main character, To be honest, we're just going to try to deal damage here. He's not going to do much, to be honest. Isla, we're going to hit him with the ultimate. It's part of the reason we were saving it, is just in case this happens. And there you go. Again, if your team is set up for magic damage, you very likely killed them on the first break. Most of the time when I was doing the testing to find consistent strategies, I was usually killing them. But again, it comes down to, like, if you get lucky with the rechants or not. There is an argument to be made for just not using rechant on some of the characters and instead just going full damage. But if you do get the rechant, it pretty much guarantees it. But again, it can be a little weird because, again, you're just sort of slowly whittling down the shields while just hitting them with extra ultimates whenever you have those extra turns. And you do use a few of your jams, but at this point in the game, there's no reason to hold on to those jams. You've already done everything. But this is a pretty good, consistent way to beat the boss. You don't have to worry about him attacking. As you recall, most of my characters didn't even have armor or accessories on. Again, that's just to prove a point. And especially if you're using, like, food and stuff to boost your elemental attack, he'll easily go down within one break phase. But anyway, that is both of the guides, so hopefully you found this helpful, and hopefully you got your achievement so you can move on.